spice rack to fill this wall right here. This will actually be our second time building this exact same spice rack because we built this at our last house, but then we just left it there. So we bought the exact same jars we had down there, and we're just gonna do it all over again. So let's do it. These are the jars we're gonna be using for our spices. I will link these on my Amazon, but they are just these little 4-ounce jars, and we're building the rack around these. We're gonna have 4 shelves that are 24 inches long, and we'll be able to fit 36 of these jars. Here's the rack we built previously. So for this one, we actually made the bottom shelf longer just for decoration. So you can really make the shelf whatever length you want to make it. I would just leave some room in case you want to add extra spices later. Here we have an 8-inch by 8-foot board. First thing we're gonna do is cut 24-inch pieces.
Can you go get my square?
Now this board will make the whole entire shelf. It'll be the back, bottom, and the front. We're gonna start by cutting the back, which is 2 1/4. And this is cut at a 45-degree angle. Typically you would use a table saw for this, but we're gonna try to use the miter saw. Although we do have a table saw, it's just already in the house set up. Which means we're gonna have to flip it once we cut it because it's not long enough. So if you have a good table saw, I would definitely use that. We are cutting this piece into 3 sections, 2 1/4, 1 1/4, and 4. These measurements are from the widest side, angling in 45 degrees. So with an 8-inch board, that leaves an extra 1/2 inch of wiggle room. Again, because we're using the miter saw, we have to flip it, which this does risk having uneven edges. So if you have a table saw, I would definitely recommend that because we did have some uneven edges. Now it's time to assemble the whole thing, which we're going to be using wood glue and a nail gun. Here's a better view of all of the cut pieces. So the bottom is the 4-inch piece. The 4-inch is the very, very bottom, and then it angles 45 degrees on both sides. Then we have the 2 1/4 for the back and the 1 1/4 for the front. I would not go much taller on the front because otherwise it's kind of tough to get the jars out. And then for the back, you want to keep in mind your mounts. Whatever you're using to mount it, make sure you have room for that. The front. I'll mention this again later in the video, but I nailed through the front board when I should have nailed through the bottom going up. That way the nail marks are not seen from the very front of the spice rack. Not the end of the world, but definitely more noticeable once it is stained. Here you can see I'm using clamps to make sure everything is lined up nicely. It is kind of hard to pull the boards together and nail at the same time. All right, there it is. Boop. I've been putting the glue on kind of sparingly because I don't want it to ooze out onto the wood because then it might affect the stain. This one's a little rough. We had a bad cut on the one end, but we'll just have to wood fill it. Fortunately, that's the back. All right, all 4 are done. Now we need to do a little bit of sanding and touch-ups before I stain it. I'm mainly sanding any loose wood pieces and the glue. If you see any glue on there, take it off. It will make your stain splotchy. Now it is time to stain these, and I'm going to be using the Early American finish. I use this stain for literally everything. This brush is kind of old and it's not really working the best, truthfully, but usually I just go through and kind of drench the whole thing, and then I go through with a rag and actually clean it up. Forgot to do it, but I usually try to wipe the ends off right away because they get so much darker. I haven't stained in a long time, so I completely forgot. Now the ends are really dark, which isn't the end of the world, but if I was you, I would probably try to wipe these sooner. I will be doing one more coat though. You can tell the areas on here where I got glue and didn't get it off. Those are the areas that are not staining. So you really want to make sure you get all of the glue off. Fortunately, this is kind of a rustic look, so it's not really a big deal to me, but still would prefer not to have that. This is a big loose spot. I'm gonna let it dry for at least 2 hours and then we'll see if I want to do a second coat. It's been about 2 hours. The front porch is now too sunny, so we're on the side of the house. But I'm gonna give these one more coat. My goal with this one is to not get any on the sides just because the sides are dark enough. Got the second coat on, now we're gonna let them dry again. I moved them inside because it is way too humid outside and they're not really drying. It's been about 2 hours. I'll probably wait till tomorrow to actually fill and clear coat these. Here they are all stained. Now I'm just going back through and filling all of these holes. I'm using this putty that is the early American color. I did do 2 coats though, so it's a little bit light, but it'll be fine. I am realizing as I do this though, that last time I did not nail them in directly in the front. I nailed them from the bottom because I was just thinking as I'm filling this in, I don't remember doing this on the front side where it could be seen. And that's because I didn't. I actually nailed these on the bottom section. Instead of nailing them right here on the front panel, I nailed them right here in the bottom, and that would have been a lot smarter. So if it's not too late for you, make sure you nail it in the bottom so you don't have to do all this filling. Here it is with the holes filled, so you can kind of see them, but they're not too obvious. I was originally going to go back and fill in all of these little holes here where it's kind of separated a little bit. But honestly, I feel like once it's up with these spices on it, you're not even going to be able to tell. Also, since this filler's a little bit lighter, I don't want to draw more attention to it. So I feel like it's better just to leave it like this. I went through this week and did 2 coats of this polyurethane water base. I didn't record it though because I was doing it during William's nap, but I got them all coated. So now we are ready to mount them. Here's the other shelves we got stained and mounted. So this is actually the same stain. Anyways, these shelves are now going over here. These are the brackets we're using to attach them. And we're gonna use 3 per shelf, although you really only need to use 2. However, the way that our studs hit, 3 works better because our studs are not centered. They're here, here, and here. So we kind of have to use 3 for these shelves, but our other shelves, we only use 2 because the studs hit in the center. Installing these shelves took almost an hour, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but because of the type of brackets we used, you have to have the screws perfect. As you can tell here, Andrew uses several different methods to make sure they are one level, spaced evenly, and going to mount perfectly. Just a couple things to note to make the installation go smoother. Before you even put the keyhole brackets onto your shelves, make sure you measure where your studs are at. Then you can put the keyhole bracket on the shelf where you're wanting it to sit on the stud. He also found it easier to leave the screws kind of loose to make sure the shelf fits first, and then tighten the screws to get it as flush as possible. That way he actually knows it's spaced correctly before having to blindly put it on because it is very tight. This is the best mounting technique that we found to get it as flush as we can to the wall and also as flat for the jars to sit on. But if you have a better idea, please leave it in the comments. Shelves are installed. We lined them up with the other shelves we have here, but spacing wise, this is 4 inches from top to bottom. That allows plenty of room to be able to grab these out. I think you probably could go a little farther down, but I like how you're easily able to pull them out. Once I get all my jars filled and labeled, I will show you the finished product. Here is our finished product. We do have a little extra room on the sides for more spices if we need to add them. And then here it is from the sides. So the sides end up not being as dark as they were during the first coat. So there's a little bit of spacing, but not a ton. I love how this turned out and I love the spice jars. I will link everything we used on my Amazon storefront other than like the wood. This is by far the most convenient way to organize spices and it also adds a nice touch to the kitchen. If you have any more questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.